Thank you, gentlemen. Yeah, you ready to go?
I'm here. Go ahead.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's good to see you all here tonight. I'm Rebouche, formerly of Junction Point Studios, and as of Monday, of BioWare. A simple proposition, and that is this: we at Game Studios should be game jamming during soft periods to increase creativity, team cohesiveness, and job satisfaction. And now I'm going to prove this to you. Okay, so we're going to go over what a game jam is, a brief history of it, how you run it, why should we do it, namely because of creativity and job satisfaction. And I'm going to go over a little bit about how we can convince our bosses, or ourselves if we're lucky enough to be our bosses, that this is a good idea and something that is worth our time. So game jam. Game jam. Now, the act of producing a playable game prototype based on an impromptu idea or theme with a small team in an extremely limited amount of time. That's basically it. That's what a game jam is. We're going to expand upon it a little bit from there. But basically, game jams go back to 2002 when the Indie Game Jam was first done as part of the Game Developers Conference. So that was first set up by Chris Hecker. Do you guys know who Chris Hecker is? Chris Hecker is the guy who famously said that the Wii is 2 GameCubes duct taped together. That's Chris Hecker. So Chris Hecker assembled a team of people, namely these people right here. There were about 14 of them, and they made 12 games in 48 hours, based upon a common idea, which was how many things can we get on the screen at once. I know this is a lot of information to look at, but basically you're talking about a lot of the people who were the old Looking Glass Studios people and Ion Storm, plus some Valve people, plus some Oddworld people, plus a few ninjas. So, some brain power there. Okay, so we went from the Indie Game Jam, which has happened not just in 2002, but in some years since then. And then the Lithuanians popped up and they took the idea and ran with it. I like these guys. They look like real hardcore dudes. So the Lithuanians proceeded to make aim with the Nords. And the Nords said, we can do that better than them. And they created what we actually think of as the modern model of the game jam. When you look at this looks much more like what a game jam actually looks like in a modern context. Classrooms, big rooms, some professionals, some indies. They came up with the modern 48-hour time limit, which, and some of the modern rules like theme and idea. So after that, you got the Global Game Jam, which is where my ugly mug comes in the picture. I was at the first Global Game Jam in 2009, not that long ago. And I did one here in town, and I participated in that little brouhaha, and that's how I got involved with game jams. So the way game jams work traditionally is you work with small teams, usually 1 to 8, maybe larger, maybe smaller, but about 1 to 8, rapid development over 48 hours typically, and you're using a theme like light or nice or freedom. You try to use a common engine traditionally because that helps you really rapidly develop. You want to encourage radical design and you want to make a game. I'm proposing something a little bit modified off of that. I think we should have small teams again, but that really depends on your studio. If you're a studio of 20 as opposed to a studio of 300, your deal with a small team is different, right? I don't think you should be doing one-person teams in a studio environment. I don't necessarily think lone wolves are a good idea. It could be, depending on your studio, but this can be a really valuable team-building exercise. The teams of one, they're very well acquainted with themselves. So, you want to do rapid development, which we're talking about 48 hours in a conventional context, but we don't work all day and all night in a studio. Well, sometimes. But what I propose is you take 1 week. Monday, you kind of lay down the ground rules, break up the teams, you get running. Friday, you do your presentations, everything in the middle, including if you want to stay all night. Don't forbid people. Have them come in, work, and have a good time. Use a theme, and this can be a great time to issue a leadership directive from the top and inspire your team based on an idea, right? If you have someone who's a grand visionary at your studio and they want the whole studio to think about an idea, this is a great time to pass that idea on and have them start thinking about it. Use a common tool set, preferably your own. Encourage radical design and also failure. Let people fail in a week's time, people can fail and that's fine. Encourage role switching. I think this is really super important. Let producers be programmers, let programmers be designers, let artists be audio engineers. Let people do something different from what they usually do because it improves their job satisfaction and it gives them an understanding of the other people they're working with in other departments. And make a game. So we've gone over what a game jam is and how it works. Why should we do it? Okay, so I'm going to talk about a few games that came out of game jams, right? Cannibal, Crayon Physics Deluxe, both came out of prototype ideas that were pioneered game jams and carried forward. We're also talking about Gish and Audio Surf, and this game gets its own panel because it's so good. There was a prototype called Tower of Goo, which was made at a game jam, and it was developed into a whole game called World of Goo, which is really excellent if you haven't played it. So these are a lot of the independent game darlings that people have loved in the last couple of years. And a lot of them have come straight out of game jams. Okay, so I want to talk about job satisfaction as another reason why we should do this. Malcolm Gladwell. You guys know who Malcolm Gladwell is? So Malcolm Gladwell wrote a bunch of interesting books. We call him Malcolm the Fro Gladwell. He wrote Outliers and Tipping Point and a lot of other interesting books about social phenomena. But he talks about three things that are important to people being happy with their job lives. Autonomy, complexity, and a connection between effort and reward. So I'm going to talk about these in our normal context and how a game jam is different. Autonomy every day. You got to deal with at least that many people typically in a AAA studio. You can't make your own decisions. The publisher has a say, and the studio creative director, and you can read the rest of it. A game jam it's you. And a game jam it's you and maybe the rest of your small team, but usually it's just you. You can make decisions completely on your own, and that's fine. Complexity, what we do every day is very complex. I'm not knocking it. And a game jam, though, you can take on complexity from a different perspective. You can try to take on a complex role in some other way, in audio and art, and something you're not used to, and gaining an understanding of the different complex issues other people deal with on a day-to-day basis. Connection between effort and reward. In a AAA development cycle today, we're talking about 4 years sometimes for a game to be made. And it might never get made. It may die an ugly death. And you will never see happiness from it. In a game jam, you can make something in a week that is playable and do whatever you want with it. You can put it out there, other people can play it, some people can play it, some people not can play it, but you can make it and it'll be playable and it won't be canceled. So we talked about what a game jam is, why we should do it. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can convince our bosses or ourselves that this is a worthwhile practice and a good idea. So, what did I just talk about, right? Generates new ideas, increased job satisfaction, teamwork, cross-discipline learning, low risk, it takes a week. I think we should do this after milestones, the week after milestones, the week after projects are finished. Not much work gets done those weeks anyway. And this is not a new idea, right? Who else does this? Okay, so missing from this group is Facebook, but Facebook does this. They take a certain percentage of their time for free. Atlassian was one of the first companies to do this. I was like, who is Atlassian? I don't know. Once a quarter, they take a day and they let their developers go wild and make whatever they want for one day. And they get together and they talk about it and they do whatever. You know what Atlassian made? Jira. Has anyone ever worked with Jira? It's the only bug software I've ever worked with. They also made a series of wiki stuff that I use, Confluence, which we use at Disney, right? That's our wiki software. It all came from Atlassian. Google, famous for their 20% rule. 20% of your development time should go into your own projects, right? How is this not just the same idea, but in our industry? It is. So I'm going to reiterate. Lead game studio should be game jam. Also, by the way, if you want to reach me, my email is myname@gmail.com.